Lonely Lumberjack paid $2 for woman with sack on her head at auction, marries her when she says name. The bidding began with cruel laughter. In the center of the dusty town square, where wooden barrels and worn benches made up the gathering place of the little frontier town, the auctioneer stood tall on a rickety stage. His voice was sharp, playful, mocking. $2, gentlemen, just $2 for the mystery woman. Who dares take a chance? His words were followed by jeers and the low roar of men amused at the absurdity of it all. Beside him, a woman stood motionless. Her head was covered with a coarse burlap sack, tied clumsily under her chin. Her hands twisted together at her front, pale fingers trembling though her body stayed upright. The sack blocked her eyes, but it couldn't hide her fear, her humiliation, the shame of being treated as less than human. To the crowd, she wasn't a person at all, just a spectacle, a joke, a living item put up for sale. The men in the crowd shouted crude remarks. Some offered mock bids of a penny. Others asked if a donkey might come free with her. Their laughter rolled through the air, cruel and careless, each word making her shoulders tighten further beneath the rough cloth. And then, from the edge of the crowd, a single voice spoke. $2. It wasn't loud, it wasn't shouted, but the tone cut through the laughter like an axe through dry wood. Heads turned toward the speaker. A tall figure stood in the shade of the buildings, broad shoulders squared beneath a faded flannel shirt. His beard was thick, his eyes serious, his boots worn from long miles of earth and pine needles. He was known to many, though spoken of rarely, Elias, the lumberjack who lived deep in the forest, away from people, away from laughter, away from the very world now staring at him. The auctioneer blinked, then smirked. "Well, we've got ourselves a buyer," he announced, his voice rising theatrically. $2, gentlemen, and sold. He slammed the gavel down against the wooden stand. The crowd erupted into another round of laughter. The lonely woodsman finally found himself a woman, for less than the price of a sack of potatoes. Someone shouted, but Elias didn't flinch. He walked with slow, deliberate steps toward the stage, his face unreadable. He laid 2 crumpled bills on the table, then turned to the woman. He didn't pull her down. He didn't drag her. He simply extended his rough, calloused hand, palm open, steady. For a long moment, she didn't move. Then, as if weighing the difference between one form of cruelty and the possibility of something different, she placed her trembling hand into his. The laughter behind them roared again as Elias led her off the stage and through the crowd. Yet he never looked back. His tall figure parted the mocking men like a stone splitting a river current. She walked beside him silently, her head still covered, her body stiff with fear, until the noise of the town grew distant, and only the sound of cicadas and the crunch of boots on dirt remained. When they were alone on the long road to the pines, Elias stopped. His voice, when it came, was quiet but certain. "You can take it off now. No one will touch you here." Her hands shook as she reached up. The knot at her chin gave way, and the sack fell. Sunlight bathed her face for the first time in days. She blinked rapidly, her eyes adjusting. She was younger than Elias had expected, though hardship had carved faint lines around her eyes. Her hair was tangled, her cheeks hollow, but her gaze, when it finally met his, was sharp, alive, defiant even in exhaustion. "My name is Anna," she whispered, her voice rough from disuse. And that was the moment Elias knew. He didn't know how or why, but something inside him settled, like a puzzle piece finding its place. He had lived years in silence, years in loneliness, years with nothing but the trees and his axe for company. And yet here, in this stranger with trembling hands and a voice that carried both fear and fire, he saw something that mattered. They walked the rest of the way to his cabin without many words. The forest swallowed the road, tall pines whispering above them. Birds stirred, squirrels scattered, and the air grew cooler beneath the shade. When at last they reached the small clearing, the cabin came into view, a sturdy wooden structure built by Elias's own hands, with smoke faintly curling from the chimney and a chopping block waiting by the side. He opened the door for her. "It's not much," he said simply. To Anna, it was more than much. It was walls, a roof, a fire that gave warmth instead of danger, and a man who had not laughed when she revealed her face. She stepped inside, and for the first time in years, she exhaled without fear. Their marriage wasn't born from ceremony. No priest, no rings, no vows spoken before witnesses. It was born from survival, from necessity, from 2 people who had known different kinds of loneliness finding themselves bound by fate. They shared bread and broth at the small wooden table that night, the silence between them not uncomfortable but cautious, like two animals learning to trust. The days that followed were not easy. Anna carried wounds that weren't visible. She woke some nights gasping, the echoes of cruel laughter and hunger gnawing at her. She flinched at sudden sounds, at the raising of a hand, at the heavy silence of the woods. Elias, too, carried scars, though his were quiet ones. Years of solitude had made him wary, unskilled in words, unsure of how to bridge the distance between them. His love was expressed not in poetry but in actions, the way he chopped extra firewood so she would never be cold, the way he mended the roof so no rain would leak through, the way he waited patiently beside her when fear seized her body. Their first great test came from outside. The townsfolk did not forget. Whispers spread quickly. Elias had paid $2 for a woman with a sack on her head. What kind of woman would agree to that? The gossip was cruel. Some called her a beggar, others something worse. Men smirked when Elias came into town for supplies. Women pitied him or mocked her in hushed tones. And though Anna tried to pretend she didn't hear, the words cut deep. They threatened to send her back into the shadows she had barely escaped. Elias noticed. One morning, after hearing the whispers too many times, he did what no one expected. He stood in the town square, his voice louder than it had ever been, and declared, "Anna is my wife. She is not for your laughter, nor your pity. She is mine as I am hers. If you mock her, you mock me." His eyes, sharp as an axe blade, met each man who dared smirk. For a moment, the town was silent. And though the gossip never fully ended, something shifted. Anna saw, maybe for the first time, that he would fight for her dignity, even at the cost of his own reputation. Seasons passed. Slowly, Anna found strength again. She tended a garden behind the cabin, planting herbs and vegetables. She collected wildflowers and placed them in jars, bringing color to the wooden walls. She learned to split kindling beside Elias, her hands blistered but proud. She discovered her voice in small laughter, in quiet songs she hummed by the fire, in stories she dared to share about her childhood before the world had broken her. Elias, in turn, softened. He began to speak more, about the hidden places in the forest, about the first cabin he built and how it collapsed in a storm, about the mother he lost too young and the father who raised him with little more than discipline and silence. With Anna, his silence became less heavy. He even laughed sometimes, a deep, rough sound that surprised him as much as it surprised her. Years went by. Their life was not glamorous, but it was theirs. The garden flourished. The cabin grew sturdier. The forest became less of a solitude and more of a home. They built a bond out of small things. Bread baked together, nights spent by the fire, the rhythm of an axe striking wood while a voice hummed softly nearby. When strangers asked in later years how they had met, Anna never spoke of the sack or the auction. She would only smile and say, "He heard my name, and he saw me." And Elias, sitting beside her, would nod, because that was the truest part of their story. What had begun with $2 ended in a love that no price could measure. Their story became less about where they came from and more about what they built, proof that dignity can be restored, that love can bloom from the unlikeliest soil, and that the world's laughter cannot define the worth of a human soul. The lesson they left behind was simple but powerful. Love does not ask what the world thinks you deserve. Love asks only for courage, the courage to offer a hand, the courage to speak a name, the courage to see another person not for what they appear to be, but for who they truly are. And sometimes, that courage is enough to change two lives forever.